Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
I feel like on this podcast, many times, we have talked about why we do large group, what's the purpose of large group time, what should a large group time look like, and it suddenly occurred to me when I was doing work for something else and I ran across some information, it suddenly occurred to me that we have not really explained the value of small groups, what they should be like, and what to focus on, because we're always trying to get people to stop doing that large group that had like memorizing the date and the counting numbers on the calendar. We're always campaigning against that. But I also now would like to campaign for small group time and its intent. We talked about how large group time, that intent was to remind children they're part of a group and to bring them together as a community. Then another time of day, separate from free play, should be small groups when we divide the children up intentionally. The adults decide who's going to be in what group. Each adult in the room takes a group, and we do very intentional and planned activities with young children that during which we are trying to instruct based on our goals for teaching. So small groups are all about skill building. When I was new to early education, many years ago, we used to bring children into small group activities to create a craft. That was really, I think, the majority of my small groups when I was a classroom teacher were, come over, we're going to make this.
Yes, I think that some people are still doing it that way.
Undoubtedly, because things, they last for years until someone says, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, and even then,
I
also feel like small groups, when I was first starting out, was something called centers, where you would purposely rotate the kids. Like you would set out.
You still do rotate the kids.
No, but like more like it was like differently. Like it was like, here is like a set of manipulatives, here's a set of manipulatives, here's a set of manipulatives. Now we're rotating. There was no like intentional instruction about it. It was just like a way to split them into smaller groups. And we're going to set a timer, and every 5 minutes we're going to rotate, and that's it. And like, there was no like actual like objective to it, I don't feel always. Or maybe one of the tables would be like the craft table, and then you would have like the other tables just busy, doing something else while you were doing the craft. It wasn't like what small groups are today, which I think is more intentional. Back then it was just like, just throw random stuff. It wasn't really planned. It was just like, throw random stuff there and we'll rotate around. And it was very timed, very specific.
And what you're saying is the focus was still, let's create a craft and then let's keep the other groups busy. It's busy. Very different busy work today.
At the other tables. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the recommendation now is to divide the children, all of them at the same time. Nobody's in free choice time. All the children are being divided up into small groups, and each small group focuses on a different area of learning. For example, one small group may be doing something that's focusing on building their language, communication, and literacy skills. Another small group may be focusing on something that builds their math skills. Another small group may be focusing on something that builds the muscles in their hands, their fine motor development. They do rotate throughout the day, not consecutively. Each small group the activity should be about 10-15 minutes, which for children ages 3 and up in early childhood is about their attention span. So that should be somewhere around 10 minutes. And then we can't ask them to just go to their next small group right after that, because now we're talking 20 minutes of sitting and listening. And if they go to a third small group after that, we're talking 30 minutes of sitting and listening. It's a long time. So throughout the day, you can spread out these small groups. But by the end of the day, everybody has rotated to the math, the language, communication, and literacy, the fine motor, or whatever you decide is going to be. I recommend that every day children have a small group focusing on literacy and another small group focusing on math. And then the third one, whatever, because we know that working with children about language, communication, and literacy, and working with children on math is what helps to lay the foundation for the future. We want them to intentionally experience that every day. So when we divide children into small groups, just like I referenced earlier, large group is supposed to create a community, remind them they're part of a group. Small group has other purposes. One is, I am going to sit with this small group and I'm going to teach a specific objective, a specific skill. Like, for example, if I'm at the math table, today we've decided to focus on patterning. I'm going to have materials and an activity for the children that focuses them on patterning while they're sitting with me. So I have a goal in mind. It isn't about the teaching topic necessarily, whatever your topic is for the month or the week or whatever you do. It's not about that. Small groups shouldn't be about that. Small groups should be focusing on the goals you use to teach, whether that's your state standards, a tool like High Scopes Core Advantage or Teaching Strategies Gold, whatever you use in your program that tells you the milestones for children's learning. That's what small groups focus on. Right. So then, like, while I'm doing patterning with the math group, Allison might be sitting with a group, and what they're doing is they are recalling a story that we heard about during a read aloud during the week. And maybe we have pictures from that story, and we're working together to put the story in the right order for our language and literacy activity. And then maybe there are children in a third area of the space who they're working on fine motor. So we've put out some Play-Doh for them because we're very short staffed. We only have two adults in this room. And that third group has to do something a little more independent. So maybe you've put out puzzles or you've put out Play-Doh or something like that for them to work on. And so we're focused on what is the goal. One table was that patterning, another group was recall of a story and telling a story, and story has a beginning, middle, and end. And then that other group was maybe fine motor, who's sitting with puzzles or Play-Doh or, problem solving and fine motor. And then we rotate throughout the day. It's also a really good time to introduce new materials to children. We talk all the time about rotating the materials in our classes, and we bring things in. And we shouldn't just be hoping the children know how to use it. A good use for small group is also to bring the new materials into a small group. If those materials are math related, that's your math for the day. If those materials are language and literacy related, that's that for the day. So you bring in these new materials and you sit with the children and model their use.
Yeah. And it gives them a chance to actually use it after you've modeled it for a little bit. Because when you do it in large group, I remember I used to introduce stuff in large group like that. It's just me. It's me showing them, and then, all right, you're on your way kind of thing. And you throw it into the free play, but then it doesn't, doing it that way, you don't know if they've actually really understood how to use it. But if you're sitting in a small group, not only have you demonstrated it and modeled it, now it's like, okay, now it's your turn to try this new thing out, while I'm sitting here, while I can guide you and help you, instead of just doing it all with all 15 children and hoping for the best during free play, so that's a good way to do it, because then they get a chance to play with this new thing immediately.
Right. I remember doing that. I brought in, I found this really great materials in a store near me that had gears. So I sat with the children during small group time, and I was showing them, how do you put the gears in, how they turn each other, because I can't just put something like gears out and expect them to figure out how to use it. So we were sitting, we did it one day, I think it was, in small group. The groups came over, we experimented with the gears. I told them where it would be in the classroom, and there you go. I introduced them to a new material. It's also a good time to introduce them to any new idea, like, here's how gears work. Right. Yeah. Even if the material, let's say the material's in the room and it's not being used. I find that's very true of science areas. They just sort of sit there and nothing's being explored or
Yeah.
used. Or, it's
A
not a
lot
bad
of the
idea
stuff
to
in the
take those
science area
items
is
over.
complicated to use. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
complicated to use, you know? So like, that's the stuff that it's there, and it's great that it's there, but they might not know how to use it, you know? So you have to sit with them and demonstrate that kind of stuff so that they know how to do it properly, so they're getting something out of it. If you don't do that, it's gonna just sit there on the shelf,
Yeah.
because they're gonna be like, they're not interested in it, or it's going to be misused, and then its purpose is not going to be helping them learn anything, right? So yeah, science gets kind of ignored a lot, but science has some cool stuff in it, but it does need to be demonstrated. You can't just hope for the best over there. You know, I find some of the manipulatives to be that way too, that they,
True.
you know, if they don't know that these are, say, sorting, like I have a set of sorting birds or something like that, and it's like, yeah, they came with this cool little bowl, and they're like, for a while they were just like, you know, almost like doing symbolic play with it, like these are the birds, which is also fine. But I showed them one day, I'm like, no, you can take these and sort them, you could take these and make patterns with them, there's different ways you can do this stuff, you know. And now they actually use it in a variety of ways, but sometimes they just don't know. They're just like, all right, this is cool stuff, I'll just pretend to do something else with it. And there's so much learning that can be happening that they just don't know about.
But which sort of segues into another purpose for small group. You mentioned earlier, when you're sitting in large group, it's really just you doing everything, and it's often the adults doing a lot of the talking. Small group enables us to have conversations with just several children, right? Maybe 4 to 5 children. We're sitting, we're having a conversation, and children learn how to share their thoughts with each other. So if I bring science things over, for example, and let's say we're using the magnifying glasses together to observe something we brought in from outside, like rocks or something like that. What we get to do is share what we're seeing. We get to learn new vocabulary. We get to extend the children's thinking by asking them questions. In a smaller group, children, I think, are very often less intimidated about answering questions than they are in a large group. So we can sit and have deeper conversations with children, which is another purpose of a small group time. I want to really work on extending their thinking and their language use. They will feel more comfortable in that small group as I work on doing that.
I feel like in the small group, it's more conversation which is what you want to model, is like how to have a conversation with somebody. When you're in large group, it's not as conversation.
I mean, there should be conversation
in my opinion.
In large group, though. There should be conversation.
It should be.
In large
but
group.
I feel like it's different.
It is, because you're going to get children who are more intimidated in the large group than they are in a small group. Not everyone is a public speaker. So if you get children who don't enjoy the public speaking, you're more apt to be able to work with them on language and communication in a small group.
Yeah, which I don't think you necessarily can do in a large group, you know? So I feel like I love having the conversations that I have in small groups, you know, and you get to really know the kids a little bit more too, of like what they're interested in, what they enjoy talking about, what they can and cannot do. You know, you're really like tapping into that kind of stuff. In a large group, you're not going to necessarily see all that, you know. I think there's the intimidation factor, and I think there's also like, it's hard to see what everybody can do or hear what everybody wants to say when there's 14 of them talking to you, 15 of them talking to you, or more. Like, I don't even know. Like, you got a smaller group, it's more intimate, you know, so you can really talk. I also like to like model different things, like when Cindy's saying like, hey, maybe we're gonna like do magnifying glasses with rocks. Well, yeah, we could do the magnifying glasses with rocks. We could also like, oh, maybe I'm going to sit here and draw the rock and what the rock is, or maybe, you know, like there's different ways that you can now model these like observation skills, or like different things, like extending it even further in that small group. Whereas in a large group, you're like, okay, yeah, we looked at rocks, great, let's move on, kind of thing. It's there's no intimacy to it. There's no, you can really like take your group and be like, oh, these children are really into this, we can go further, or maybe we are just going to stay right here right now. You'll know based on what's going on.
Well, that's because it enables us, and when you're in a smaller group, It enables us to really observe the individual children in a way that I can't at any other time of day. Right. And as I'm sitting there with the children, I can take notes. I can take photos of what they're doing with permission. I can take audio recordings of what they're doing. You can do all that during free choice time as well. Yeah. But I think that during small group, you know, I'm sitting there with the children, likely at a table. I can have something to write on as they're doing things. I think it's simpler. When I talk with people who work in programs that are very short staffed now, and I say to them, when do you get a chance to take your observation notes? They often tell me during small group. I mostly get the chance during small group.
Mostly during small group.
Yeah.
Mostly during small group. I do some of it during free choice if I'm able to. But yeah, mostly during small group. It's the only time you have, really, that you get to be that close with them.
Yeah, that's right. And the focus is not, let's create a craft, because a craft does not prove that the children learned anything today. So when they're sitting with you in these small groups, it's important to communicate to families what you've done, right? So you say, today we worked on patterning and in our math small group, and here's a photo of the children doing that. We worked on fine motor skills by doing puzzles or Play-Doh or whatever you decide in our third small group. Send home a photo of them doing that. And then during our language and literacy group, we sequenced a story that we had heard in the past. So we were recalling what the story was, putting things in a logical order. You know, here's all the skills we use today. And you can send photos to the families of them doing all this, which I think is far more evidentiary. Is that a word? I might have just made up a word, but I think it's, I think I did. It's far, unless now we're going to have an attorney contact us and say, no, it's a word. I think it's more evidence than any craft can prove that their children are building ideas and skills and knowledge and abilities. So, you know, we want to focus these small groups intentionally on the goals for teaching, intentionally on introducing new ideas and new things to children, intentionally on encouraging them through deep conversations during which we ask questions that don't have a quick answer, like an open-ended question, make the children more deeply think about what it is we've introduced to them. Converse with them back and forth. It's so wonderful for young children to sit at a table and converse back and forth, just like we're going to want them to do during meal times as they get older, right? We encourage them to sit and talk to people, but they don't know how to do that unless we model it during small group time. I mentioned earlier that small groups do not take place during free play time. And I want to make sure everybody heard that, who's never heard us speak about that before, because you're new to this podcast. Used to be that during free playtime, we would call children over to a table and interrupt their play. And we now know that children need 60 minutes of uninterrupted play. So we need to let them all make choices and play in the room. And we go out there to support their skill building as they choose what they're going to do. And that allows us to grab all the teachable moments. Separate time of day is small group, where the intention comes from the teacher. During free play, it's a lot of children's intentions, what they want to play with, who they want to play with, what they want to make out of it, or, you know, what they want to build, what they want to draw. It's children's decision-making time. Small group time is teacher decision-making time. Here's who I want in this group. Here's where I want you to start. Here's the next rotation. Here's the skills we're building. That's all the adult-led stuff that we need to get into the day.
And I think it's important to mention that, because I sat in a training just in September where somebody told us that we were allowed to do small groups during free choice, which I was like, yeah, no, you're not. No, but
uninterrupted.
So there are trainings still out there that are saying that is okay. And it is not. It needs to be two separate things.
It does. Follow, if you have one of the, how can I put this? If you have one of the highly used curriculums, like creative curriculum, high scope, Reggio Emilia, you know, Montessori, follow those curricular approaches, which don't have you do that sort of thing. And, you know, whenever in doubt, you want to make sure that you're reading things or looking up things based on facts. The truth is that anyone can put anything on the internet, and anyone can declare themselves a professional development provider and not know the current recommendations.
Right.
So you want to be very careful. And whatever we say to you on this podcast is research-based. We have a page on our website where we've posted some of the resources that we've used for the information. We also are familiar with accepted curriculums, state-approved curriculums that do all of these things, that are approved, I think, in every state, pretty much, and almost. And, we are using research. If you're ever wondering, where did you learn this, Cindy and Alison, or what information do you have to back up what you're saying? I don't see it on your website. Please contact us. We can provide it to you. We're not making anything up on this podcast.
Right.
We are reporting to you what we, right. We're not hiding any of it. It's not some sort of Cindy and Alison secret. So you can always go to our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, and go to our contact form and just sort of say, I'm wondering what evidence you have of this practice, because I'd like to bring it to my program. We've had people say that. You can find us on Facebook and post a message in the Facebook page. Again, it's called How Preschool Teachers Do It. So, find us, contact us, and let us know what evidence you need to ensure that the things that we talk about on this podcast are at least considered where you work. And if you're a family member of a child listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube, and you're thinking, I wish that my child's program did this, contact us. We can give you information that you can bring to them.
We got the goods. Yeah.
We do. We certainly do.
We do.
And probably more than you even want. We would be happy to give you.
More than you want. Yeah.
Okay, preschool peeps. Now go and think about, what is the purpose of my small group time? Is it to focus on the things Alison and Cindy spoke about? Because that will help children to build skills and add to their knowledge and understandings.
Yeah.
All right. Next week on the podcast, folks, I think we have what could be considered a hot topic coming up next week. Hot topics.
Yeah. Alison,
or at least
not to get angry.
or at least like Alison's emotional about it. So come back next Monday and see what we're talking about. She is. I'm more entertained. She's very emotional. Come back and see what it is. Little teaser.
Yeah.
Catch you next time, preschool peeps.
Bye, peeps.